Hello, John Talley here with Partzilla.com. Welcome back to our third installment of our top end project on our TRX 400EX. What I've got laid out on the table is our cylinder, which we just picked up from the machine shop, our head, which we're going to go ahead and replace the seals on it since we're here. Got the valves out in front, and in a couple of minutes I'm going to take them over to the grinder and actually wire brush them off. They got a fair amount of carbon on them, and we need to get that cleaned off. Plus we have all these parts that we're going to be putting in the machine. We've got our piston, we've got our rings, a new wrist pin, the valve stem seals, our base O-ring, which actually goes on the bottom of this cylinder right here. And then we've got a complete gasket set that has our base gasket, our head gasket, and all the associated O-rings and seals that we're going to need to get it reassembled. So let's grab those valves, run over there, get them cleaned up, and then we'll start putting her back together. Alright guys, when you're using the wire brush to clean this off, remember it's spinning at over 3,500 RPMs. It takes a light touch, but don't let it grab it out of your hands. Now I'm just using some contact cleaner to clean off the just some residual left by the head gasket. Alright, we've got our valves cleaned up, we've got the head cleaned up. Use that wire brush just to clean out the combustion chamber just a little bit. And what we're going to do next is going to go ahead and replace all of the seals. I mean, is it really necessary? No, they're in decent shape, but keep in mind that this machine is 10 years old or coming up on it. So it's an inexpensive part. We're down this far into it. Let's go ahead and get them replaced. Make sure you get that little ring at the bottom. Here's a little trick to getting the new ones back on. What I'm using is just an 11mm socket, which this just happens to fit right inside of. So we'll use that to push them on. Make sure when you're putting these on to keep a lookout for that little snap ring. See right here, this one's actually gotten pushed down, so we need to make sure that that ring's up on the rubber. Alright, we've got our valve seals in, all four of them. The combustion chamber's been cleaned out a little bit, so it's time to go ahead and start getting the valves back in. What you want to do is just get a little bit of oil on the stem. Slide her back in. Number one. Alright. Press the spring back down to about right there. It can be a little tricky getting these keepers back in. Let it slide over to or tilt over to the side, pop in the first one, and then seat it down. Now you just need to rock it back the other direction, grab the second keeper, drop it in place, and then push it in with your finger. Release the tension on the spring, and they'll lock down on the valve stem. Okay, with our valves back in, we need to address our piston. And what I want to show you is the orientation that we need to put the rings in. Basically, you've got three different rings. Well, the old ring is made up of a spacer and a lower and upper ring, but I call them just one ring. But they need to be oriented in a more or less a triangle configuration, with your top ring right here. That's where the gap needs to be. Your second ring is 120 degrees away, so it's going to end up being about right here. And then your oil rings, you're going to have the spacer right there in the center, and then about 20 millimeters away you'll have the bottom ring, the keeper, and then another 20 millimeters this direction. So that's the general orientation that you're going to have. The rings are actually marked with a number. In this case it's N25, and that'll show you the top half of the ring. And the way you tell the top ring from the second ring is the top ring on the outside edge. You're going to be able to see where it's chamfered on either side, so it kind of has a dome shape to it. Your second ring, looking at it from the outside, from the top, it's going to look like it has an angle right here where it kicks out and it's wider toward the bottom of the ring than on the top of the ring. So that's the way it's going to need to go together. All right, so let's start putting it together. All right, you want to start with your oil ring first, and it's actually made up of those 3 different pieces. Put your spacer in first, then the bottom oil ring, then the top oil ring. Then you can go ahead and put in your second ring. And then finish it off with the top one. Once you get them in place, then you want to spin them into that orientation where they're 120 degrees away from each. At this point, you can go ahead and put in one of your circlips. Make sure the end of it is not in this section right here. You want it facing away. All right, go ahead and start your wrist pin on the other end. Lower it down onto the connector rod. Make sure it's lined up. And just push her in. Make sure it bottoms out against the other clip. After that, you can go ahead and put in the other snap ring on the other side. Make sure you clean off all the residual gasket material on the base gasket. At this point, you're safe to go ahead and remove your shop towels. Get your base gasket put on. Feed your timing chain up through it. Very careful not to rip it, as it is somewhat fragile. All right, there's one additional seal that does not come with the gasket set from Honda. It's actually an O-ring that goes on the very base of the cylinder. I mean, there's a base gasket, but then you also have the seal. She just slides in to this little groove right down on the bottom. And then we'll get the cylinder pushed down on top of her. All right? All right, before you put the cylinder on, you want to make sure you've got a little bit of oil around the rings and on the piston, just to get it started up in there. Go ahead and oil down the bore as well. Line it up, and let's start feeding those rings up into the bore. You can use the tips of your fingers just to compress it on either side, and then start working it up into the bore. Go ahead and push it all the way down. Line up on your dowels, pull your chain all the way up through, get it out of the way, and seat it down. Alright, here we're setting our torque wrench and getting them torqued down. I usually start off by just putting around 10 to 15 pounds in a crisscross pattern before I take it out to the final torque of 32 foot-pounds. Once again, doing it in a crisscross pattern. Now you need to go ahead and install your timing chain guide. Make sure it engages on the bottom. You can rock it back and forth, and if it flips up, you don't have it engaged properly. Very important here, don't forget your 2 dowels for the head. Go ahead and feed your chain through the head gasket. Now with your head in place, go ahead and feed the chain up through the head and lower it down, making sure it's aligned on those 2 dowels we just installed. It'll slide right into place. Shouldn't rock at all. Don't forget to put your washers. You'll have 4. And be extra careful when you're putting in the one next to the timing chain. You don't want to drop that and have it go down into the engine. Alright, these are about the same as the base cylinder. You want to go ahead and just do them around 10 to 15 pounds to begin with. And they actually have the same torque as the cylinder bolts, which is 32 foot-pounds. All right, before you put your camshaft in, you need to make sure that you put in the spring and the plunger for the decompression mechanism on the camshaft itself. Be very careful. Once again, this is right next to the engine where it would just drop straight down in there. And now you can set your camshaft in place with your timing chain just draped over the top of it. Next, you can just tilt it up and slide on the timing gear itself. From here, you can slide the chain over the sprocket and then bring the sprocket back up onto the camshaft where the bolts are going to feed through. You need to make sure that the cam lobes are facing down. Next, you can install the two dowels on either end of the camshaft itself. Once they're in place, you can go and install the camshaft bolts. Start with the top. Once we're done with that, we'll rotate it 180 degrees and grab the one at the bottom. Don't forget those two base bolts for the cylinder. Just a couple of 8mm on the side. Next, we need to go ahead and prep our camshaft chain tensioner. All you need to do this is just a flat blade screwdriver, turn counterclockwise to bring the piston all the way back. It's spring loaded, and if you carefully remove the screwdriver, it will actually sit in place. Get that into the cylinder. Don't forget the gasket. Then install those two 8mm bolts. At that point, all you need to do is just tap it, and that'll release the spring, and it'll put the appropriate amount of tension on the chain itself. Next, we need to just install our valve cover gasket. Then we just want to use a little bit of oil, put it over the cam lobes, just to make sure that they're submerged in oil on startup. After that, we can just put on the head cover with all those little 8mm bolts all over the place. Once you get all of those tightened down, then we need to put in the main motor mount for the head, at least, on top of the machine with those two large spacers. At this point, we need to go ahead and adjust our valves. Remember, this 0.1mm on the intake, 0.12 on the exhaust. Once they're adjusted, go ahead and put on our inspection caps. Now we can start working on the exhaust. Put in our new crush washers that seal up the exhaust manifold, and start working that exhaust back up in there. Bring up our two flanges, start tightening down those 12mm bolts. Next, just slide the slip-on exhaust back on. Don't forget that bolt down at the bottom. And then retighten your clamp right there. Reinstall your inspection plugs for the crankshaft where you found top dead center. Now we can just slide the intake back on. Retighten the clamp on the intake boot on the front and the back of the carburetor. Then you've got those three 10mm bolts that hold the air box in place. Two up front where these two clamps are, and then the one in the back. Don't forget that plastic shield that goes up under the fuel tank, held in place by a couple of 10mm bolts. Next, route your fuel line up from the carb through this little rubber flap, then lay in the fuel tank. Hook up your fuel hose, turn the fuel on. All right, guys, we've got everything buttoned back together, and now comes the moment of truth. So let's fire it up and see what happens. Come on. Liking that. Music to my ears. All right, to wrap this up, all we need to do is reinstall the plastics and go through the break-in procedure. The first 50 miles is going to be really important for this, so you want to make sure you don't run it wide open. You want to keep varying your speed, starting and stopping a lot, because you're trying to get the rings to seat back in properly. Listen, if you need any of the parts that I used for this, this rebuild, come see us at Partzilla.com. If you have any questions, if there's anything that you couldn't see that I was working on, just leave me a comment below, and I'll do my best to answer you. Listen, we really appreciate you watching, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.